Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us, tmosso@the1916company.com. It is in the description below. Your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any of our platforms. Please reach out to us directly, tmosso@the1916company.com for pricing. Today, we're discussing a throwback to the mid-2000s. Launched for the 2006 model year and only made across 3 model years. We have the Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore Scuba Boutique Edition. There were 3 different versions of this watch made from 2006 to 2008. This orange and black dial, a blue dominant color theme, and a red dominant color theme. The first Royal Oak Offshore Diver was created as the Scuba for retailer Vempe back in 2005, and subsequent to that, it became a boutique exclusive for Audemars Piguet before the Diver later on became a regular offering in the catalog. So this model offered in 2006, part of the boutique series of 3 different dial designs, and I find this to be the rarest and the most interesting of the 3. So right here we have reference 15701ST, 42 millimeters in diameter in steel. Because it's not a chronograph and it doesn't have a compound or modular movement, it's only 12.6 millimeters thick. Now it's 53.7 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip if we just count the case, but if we count the intermediate links, the plots outboard, then the total distance across the wrist is 58 millimeters. When you throw it on the wrist, it is a broad watch but a flat one, which is an unaccustomed feeling for an offshore, as they tend to be thick. This is as thin as most Rolex sports watches, which is to say it's a very different look. Easy to fit underneath the cuff, especially with the sloped bezel, but exceptionally broad. It has wingspan. Now you can see from over the top, which tends to exaggerate the width of the watch, it appears to overhang the edge of my wrist, whereas you can see down the barrel, especially with the downward cant or angle of the lug at each side, it does fit. So I'd recommend this watch for a wrist my size or larger, so 16 centimeters circumference and up. In the past, I might have rated this for a 15, but I think the best advisory that I could give is my size or larger. You probably don't want to go any narrower. Taking a look at the strap, this was once upon a time exclusive to these models, the so-called diver strap. It became very popular, and chronograph owners were ordering these for the chronos, so AP eventually made it a regular offering, but to this day it's known as the diver strap because of where it started in the collection. So you can see the bevel continues from the lug profile through the edge. We have these little strakes that visually extend the plots. It has a sort of matte anti-reflective finish. You can see on the bottom, no crimping, no gouging, brand new AP factory strap. It has a matching friction fit single fold AP logo style deployant clasp that is fixed using a little screw and bar system right there. And in fact, it is fixed at the lugs to the case using screws and bars, which you like to see on an expensive and finely made watch, as that's more secure than spring bars. We have a little polymer shoulder for the internal rotating dive bezel, which works in a ratcheting fashion, just like this, allowing you to line up the minute hand with the index, and then you could screw this down. The watch is 300 meters water resistant. It is a true diver. We also have the polymer shoulder on the crown that's used for winding and setting the watch. Note that the shoulder here hexagonal, a reference to the hexagonal bolts that sit inside the bezel. Also note how fresh this bezel is. Rare, if any, polishing in its lifetime. You can see just how deeply recessed those bolts are. That indicates that all of the bezel metal is present. Now, of course, this being an offshore, the bolts are steel rather than the gold you'll find on a standard Royal Oak, but they are bolts. That's how their slots can be oriented in a circular fashion all the way around. Now, taking a look, the gasket is a styling feature of the Royal Oak Offshore. The original Royal Oak, designed by Gerald Genta, came out in 1972. The Offshore, designed by young Emmanuel Guet, came out in it came out a little bit more than 2 decades later, in 1993. So in 93, Gerald Genta was apparently all in a huff over the bastardization of his design, but Guet's Royal Oak Offshore became an icon of 90s and 2000s sports watch design and a classic in its own right. What they have in common, both Royal Oak and Royal Oak Offshore: beautiful metalwork with bevels, breaks between satin and polish, and the finishing of facets particularly sharp and executed by hand. The bezel gasket is large and well pronounced. It's a distinct styling feature of the Offshores. You can see we have satination on the bezel that goes top to bottom. The rounded octagonal shape, originally envisioned as a tribute to a vintage diving helmet by Gerald Gento when he designed the original offshore precursor, the Royal Oak, in 1972. We'll do a Lume Shot here so you can see this watch a little bit more easily. And you can see it is fully luminescent. In fact, it is more luminescent and easier to read in the dark than some of the later Royal Oak Offshore Divers. The Scuba exceptionally well lumed, to the point that when you line up the bezel index, you can easily see every 5-minute increment on the bezel. Not every dive bezel is fully calibrated all the way around. This one is. On the reverse side, you can see a little acknowledgement that this is sort of an AP boutique exclusive. That's the original AP manufacture building in Les Brassus in the Vallée du Joux, where Audemars Piguet is based. And again, this is a boutique special edition, so it would have only been available at Audemars Piguet factory stores. Let's screw that crown back in. So again, 300 meters water resistant, and then inside we have a JLC 899. So this is the Audemars Piguet caliber 2325, and for a long time, Audemars Piguet owned 40% of JLC, and it did up until 2000. And the sharing of movements between AP and LeCoultre, the predecessor of Jaeger-LeCoultre, goes back to the 19th century. So having a JLC movement in an AP watch actually makes a lot of sense as far as quality and tradition are concerned, and they're very close neighbors in the Vallée du Joux. Now, the movement is a unidirectional winder with a 38-hour power reserve, a 4 Hz beat rate, 32 pivot jewels, a quick set date, hacking or stop seconds, a free sprung balance for a more precise adjustment and better shock resistance, and it uses a unidirectional winding system with ceramic bearings for a more efficient winding action. And then it has a hairspring that's laser welded to the stud for still greater stability against shock and durability. Lots to love here, a proper high horology automatic movement in a high horology watch. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916 Company for purchase and pricing details.